Good morning if you're in Queensland, good afternoon if you're in the other eastern states, and good morning in Western Australia. I think that's the run around the country. With daylight saving, it gets very confusing. Welcome to this webinar on developing business advisory services to help accountants avoid suffering. Bit of a mouthful, but I hope you will agree with me that there's a very important message that's there for many accountants in practice today. If you have any questions during the webinar, can you please type your question into your computer, and in webinar jargon, raise your hand, and we will look at those questions later in the webinar and try to answer them for you. There are plenty of challenges affecting accountants in 2015. Digital disruption, changes in computer packages, more work being done by the computers. Standard business reporting. The Australian Taxation Office changes in conjunction with the software companies. The second Commissioner of Taxation didn't have too much more to say about standard business reporting at the ATSA conference in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago than what he had in 2014. But he did indicate that the program was still underway, going a little bit slower than what he'd hoped for, but it is going to happen. Tax returns becoming a commodity. There is price pressure out there in the marketplace. Outsourcing, freed up time. The story I'm hearing is that some of the firms that have embraced outsourcing by having a significant amount of their workflow performed in overseas countries obviously now have cheaper operating costs. And in the marketplace, they are utilising those cheaper operating costs to compete very forcibly with firms that obviously have not embraced outsourcing. So that's food for thought. It is a real challenge. And the financial planning changes. Now, we don't get involved in financial planning very much, but there's been all sorts of warnings in Accountants Daily and by various training organisations about the requirements for accountants to take advantage of the grandfather type clauses that apply for people who go through some preliminary assessment processes, training processes between now and the 31st of March next year, so that registrations can be in place by the 30th of June 2016. Without being an expert in this area, my only comment is it would appear that ASIC are not going to extend any further the dispensation they have offered to accountants. So if you see that financial planning is an area for you, then perhaps you'd better make sure that you can undertake the training and accreditation that ASIC has specified has to be undertaken. So these challenges are very difficult to ignore. In fact, I would suggest that if you do ignore them, you are definitely doing so at your peril. So how might all this affect you? Well, the tax office changes could cost accountants up to $1 billion. Where's this going to come from? Well, the second Commissioner of Taxation at last year's ATSA conference said that standard business reporting would reduce accountants' income by $500 million per annum. That's not once, that's every year. Now, if they are admitting to $500 million in public and indicating they've told the Productivity Commission this is what the savings will be, my guesstimate is the figure is closer to 700 or 800 million. And personal returns, well, there's already been some changes. There's now a lot more people directly lodging with the ATO. And if you put the changes there that have been variously quoted at 200 to 300 million, I think the total change that's occurring with this profession that will be probably fully implemented by 2017, the change effect, is around $1 billion per annum. Have you thought of a strategy for your firm? There's also pressure on tax return pricing. There's no doubt that outsourcers are able to offer cheaper prices. Well, that's firms that are outsourcing are able to offer cheaper prices. And there's now competition from bookkeepers. Bookkeeping is a little bit like financial planning. I think a lot of accountants have let this get away from us. And bookkeepers are obviously now doing business activity statements and other things. But some bookkeepers are now telling me that they're doing budgets, cash flow forecasts, even going to board meetings because they're more attuned of what's happening in the SME's business than what the accountant is. Food for thought. And this whole pressure on financial planning to be properly registered and accredited by the 30th of June 16 is something that you probably should be looking at. If you want to go down the path of getting involved fully in financial planning so that you're appropriately registered after the 30th of June 2016, well, you need to do something urgently. You could avoid some of this suffering by outsourcing and then competing on price for tax work. Outsourcing won't help you do other services. It will free up some time. And the big decision accountants need to make is what you're going to do with that freed up time. But you could go out and try to become bigger in the tax return market at a lower cost per client basis. Or you could gear up to offer some new services. And we think that business advisory services is a great new service for accountants to be offering. Why? Why do you think that is the case? Well, you were trained for this work. At university, you did the same undergraduate's commerce degree that everyone else did, didn't you? Didn't matter that some of those fellow students have ended up working for BHP or bigger mining companies, Woolworths, the government. Didn't matter. You all did the same degree. And when you went through the PY or the CPA accreditation, you did the same courses. So you've been trained for this work. And the other great factor in all this is SMEs want additional financial services. How do I know that? Well, there's been survey after survey conducted over the last decade by MYOB, by CCH, by Smith Inc., by various universities that have all identified that in excess of 75 to 80% of SMEs would like someone to supply them with some additional financial services. That someone, I submit to you, should be you, the accountant for those SME clients. But some people have already made the decision their accountant doesn't want to do this work, and they have gone to other people like coaches and consultants, some of whom are very good. I've worked with some of them, but some of them are also very poor in this area, more the financial area. And the other big thing about business advisory service, I hadn't really thought about this till someone had said it to me at ATSA. Well, we haven't got a tax office breathing over our shoulders, watching what we're doing, wanting to put us on lodgement programs, etc. This is just between you and your client. But please remember, your client will expect the work to be done fairly quickly. They're not going to wait for months for tasks to be undertaken. They'll want them done pretty quick. So what services do SMEs want? Well, there's a wide range of service, and these have been determined from those surveys I talked about before. The SMEs have nominated future planning. Surely that means business plans, budgets, cash flows. Business analysis and interpretation. My slant on that is key performance indicators, business ratios. Are you supplying this to your clients? Raising finance. There is more and more businesses turning to the business angel market. That is one of the good things in the Australian economy at present. There is this ever-growing group of people who have retired or have made some money, who are looking to keep their hand in, as it were, by having an involvement in another business. And there are many people out there prepared to supply capital. But businesses need to be prepared if they're going to try to raise capital. Succession exit planning. There's a huge amount of businesses that are going to get sold or will cease operations in the next decade as the baby boomers go into retirement planning. Succession and exit planning is a huge area. Management of costs. Now, in the CCH survey conducted 2 years ago, the 1,400 SMEs that were interviewed nominated management of costs as their biggest single business problem. Have you offered any services to your clients on management of costs? I must admit I was surprised when I read that survey, but that's what it disclosed. Management monitoring. I've been involved in a number of government projects of late to deliver management training, corporate governance training, management monitoring type services, because the government's services under Oz Industry have realised that this is a weakness in a lot of businesses. And they were looking at businesses that had 2.5 to 3 million turnover through to 12 million turnover, because they believed that they were vulnerable to management issues. Business plans. Perhaps that's also part of future planning. Perhaps it's not, but it was nominated by SMEs. Assistance in raising capital. Some of these things are duplicated a little bit because they're coming out of different surveys. And grants available for SMEs. David Smith, the Managing Director of Smith Inc. and a former President of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, was the key urger for ESS to develop ESS BizGrants a few years ago, primarily because on his research into SMEs, the SME market was complaining that their accountants were not keeping them aware of grants. And the thing that really upset them was when they found out that one of their competitors had received a grant and they knew nothing about it. And their question to Smithy was, why haven't our accountants told us about these grants? And in the current economic circumstances that most of your clients are operating in, I would have thought that if they can get something worthwhile done within their business, that the government will pay 50% towards, and in some cases as high as 75%, that your clients would be interested in that communication from you. Debtors management, a huge problem. The second Commissioner of Taxation at the ATSA conference in 2014 said, when he delivered the bombshell about $500 million per annum exiting the accountancy industry, don't worry, because there's plenty of other work you can do on debtors management and cash flow management, because from our perception at the tax office, we think this is a huge area of concern for SMEs, because the amount of tax they owe is completely disproportionate to what it should be. Cash flow management, same thing. Personal property securities register, due diligence. I think this is very poorly drafted legislation, but my biggest criticism is that the government of the day and the current government have not expended any worthwhile funds to effectively train small, medium enterprises and accountants as to how this system works. Have you had a look at your clients' systems to prevent them getting caught up in a problem? How many of them are starting to receive preferential payment claims from liquidators that they could have avoided if they'd registered a debtor on the PPSR? Not only are you offering your clients a service out of this particular area, but obviously you can charge for that service. I think you should be doing a due diligence review every year. and in some cases every 6 months, and even more regularly if a certain key employees who might have had this responsibility have left. Have the new people been appropriately trained? Corporate governance. As some of your clients grow, they are starting to form boards of advice and boards of directors. There needs to be a lot of training in the whole corporate governance area so that people understand. We believe at ESS BizTools, one of the key products you can be offering is to be the Chief Financial Officer for your clients. Run a virtual CFO service. With all the technology that's now available, you can set yourself up on a remote location basis to be continually in contact with what's happening in your client's premises and offer a CFO service. Cost reviews. Probably mentioned them before. Research and development management. There's a lot of money getting spent around Australia by big business and some small businesses on R&D. But a lot of people spend significant amounts of money and then they're very disappointed to find that they can't claim the R&D rebate because they're operating as a sole trader or as a partnership and didn't realise you had to be a company. And others haven't kept appropriate records. It's not as complicated as what some people are making out, the R&D market. I think every accountancy firm should be offering this as a service. Business valuations, part of the process. What's the client's business worth this year? What do you think it's worth? Is there a valuation gap? Therefore, what can you do in a strategic business consulting approach to help bridge the gap? You might have to act as a finance director type role for the next 3 to 5 years to assist the client to get better systems, better processes in place so that the business might be valued at a higher rate. Perhaps they need to do something about the intellectual property they've developed. Is it all documented? So what preparations needed to do all this? Now, obviously, an audience in a webinar like this can be everyone from administration staff, young accountants, old accountants, partners, managers, etc. But in the first instance, obviously, firms need to have input from their partners. What type of work do they want to do, or do you want to do? And then the team. So hopefully that covers everyone that's watching this webinar today. What's the team? What are you interested in doing in business advisory services? And we haven't got time in this webinar to go through all the aspects of business advisory services, but you've got some idea of the subjects by that list I just identified that SMEs have identified they want. But the most important group of all is your clients. Have a conversation with them. Ask them what services they'd like you to supply to them. I think you'll be surprised. Never ceases to amaze me that many accountants will tell me that their clients only want taxation services, that's all they want. And then a year later, when I meet some of these same people at a conference, they tell me, oh, we got a hell of a surprise. One of our favourite clients has left us and gone to someone else, a coaching organisation or another accounting firm, and they're charging treble what we were charging. Perhaps that other firm asked the client what services they would like, and then they undertook to supply those services. And then if you're going to go down this path, you need to train the team. Don't assume that you can start offering business advisory services tomorrow. I think there's a bit of preparation needed if you are going to lay the foundations and be able to effectively deliver and build this area up to being an important segment of your business. I'd like to see it over the next 3 years becoming around 40% of the fee income of accountancy businesses in Australia who are fair income, about supplying a wider range of services to clients. Now, part of this preparation is you will probably need some professional sales training, because this is not taxation work. The taxation work comes with it an obligation to lodge a tax return every year. So the tax office is really the magnet. The team is going to need to learn how to sell. Our suggestion is, after you've done your initial training, which will take 3 months if you allocate 2 hours a week to it, is that you run a series of small seminars, not large seminars. You don't want a whole stack of people coming to you at once and wanting business advisory services. Start with about 10 clients, and then in a few months' time run another webinar, a seminar for another 10 clients. And some of it might be a webinar, depending on where your clients live. And then invite those clients who've been to the seminar, who now understand your new strategies, to a one-on-one meeting whereby you can use the SME needs analysis, which is really a menu of your services, to identify the services they'd like you to supply. And then the big thing is identifying product champions within your firm. Who is going to be your expert on debtors, on the personal property securities register, on succession planning, on chief financial officer services? You need to have at least one person who is your internal expert for every product that you are going to try to sell business advisory services for. And I believe you also need industry champions. Who are the clientele of your firm already? What industries do they belong to? Have you developed more in-depth knowledge than just the profit and loss account for those people? The reason I bring up the profit and loss account is I've done a lot of work with accountancy businesses who want to embrace business advisory services. And some of them say to me, we want you to interview the clients. And when I've interviewed the clients, I get this response, something along the lines from the client: I want my accountant to know more about my business than just the profit and loss account. What does that mean? I think it means that the accountant should know more about the business, should understand the physical restraints of the business, what's happening in that industry, who are the competitors, what's the physical state of the premises out of which the business operates. That's what I call industry champions. People who will go to industry meetings. You don't have to go to too many industry meetings and don't have to write too many articles before you become considered an accounting expert in those industries. Why? Because not many accountants do it. Great way to differentiate your services. So you need to review the services you're going to offer. And then you need to formulate a marketing strategy. Clients just will not know you're doing this. You need to have told them that you are offering a wider range of services. Don't assume they know. Many firms have done that. They've gone off and done new ventures, and they've been very surprised to find that a client they might have had for 10, 15 years has gone off and seen a business coach. I heard a speaker at a conference Smith Inc. ran at Service Paradise a few years ago who said the client was paying them about $6,000, and he'd found that they'd gone to a business coach and paid the coach $26,000. And when he spoke to the client's response was, well, I didn't know you did any other work other than taxation. All you ever talk to me about is tax. All you ever send me is a newsletter that's full of tax articles. I didn't know you were interested in succession planning, my debtors' days outstanding, and implementing a system to make sure I didn't fall foul of the Personal Property Securities Act. Do your clients know what you do? So how do you get ready? I think the way to do this, and I've worked with a lot of firms all around Australia, is you need a facilitator. Now, the facilitator could be a partner, a manager, or a consultant, but you need someone who's going to coordinate what's got to happen. Otherwise, it just peters out a bit. People don't turn up. People don't read the material. Someone needs to be driving this. Our suggestion is that you utilise the material that we've produced within ESS BIZTOOLS, our training modules, to get ready for business advisory services. And you do this by having a meeting, training session, 2 hours per week that the facilitator chairs. And this will help you identify some extra training that some of your team might need. They might need to enroll in some public speaking training courses. They might need to join Toastmasters or Rostrum. They might need to learn how to deliver presentations, speak from a lectern, deliver webinars. Might be advisable for them to join the Junior Chamber of Commerce or undertake the Australian Institute of Company Directors Diploma course so that they can be more on an equal standing with the clients that they're now going to be consulting to. So this preparation period, 3 months. Why not kick it off in mid-January and you'll be finished by April. You'll be ready to launch business advisory services in May, 2 or 3 products, and then every 3 or 4 months add another 2 or 3. I get accountants ring me and say, well, how do we convince our clients that we've acted for the last 10 years and only done tax that we can now do a business advisory role? That's what I say to them. Respond in a positive manner. This is no time for being negative. You have to be proactive. And the sort of answer I think you should be giving them is what we've got on the screen now. Sure, we have traditionally specialised in tax, but we've evaluated the surveys that you may have responded to or your peers in the small business community have responded to. And we know now what the market wants. And point out to them, at university, you studied the same subjects as what the guys now working for BHP, Woolworths, the banks, and the governments studied. And when you did your PY or your CPA, you did the same thing. You've studied the same issues. And more importantly, is you understand the client. You know something about them. And then you can say you've invested a lot of time and money in the last 4 months. Undertaking surveys of your team, getting feedback from some of your clients on the services that they want, and training the team to deliver this new product range. And you've accessed tools to assist in the delivery of business advisory services. You're not going back and reinventing the wheel. And I think at the end of that, you have got to be able to look your client in the eye and say to them, we are confident that we can deliver to you an outstanding business advisory services that will assist you to build value. That's what I'd like you to be able to say to your clients. And I hope you can mean it. So what's required in a virtual CFO service? Because this is part of the services. Well, I think you need to utilize technology, obviously, to supply a virtual on-call service. You should be supplying a service model on a public company CFO role. Those of you who may have worked in bigger companies, and I did for over 10 years, I was CFO of a public company. And I got heaps of phone calls, some of them at 3 a.m. Could we do this differently? I want it recosted. I want it changed. This is with the CEO. And he thought he was going to get that by 7:30 a.m. What would it cost us to do this? Don't your clients have the same question? Just because they're running small businesses doesn't mean they haven't got the same problems that the CEO of Woolworths has got, or the CEO of a manufacturing business that happens to be a public company. I think one of the other services you need to make sure is you're producing monthly management accounts. If a client's got 5 different operating divisions, there should be 5 different sets of financials produced, not all lumped together in one P&L, because that's how you send it to the tax office. If you're going to supply this service, I really suggest to you it's got to be on a management accounting basis. And there's got to be key performance indicators prepared each month, compared back to the benchmarking.com figures, compared back to what happened last year, compared back to budget. So there's some real indicators. And you need to prepare a commentary to explain the financial performance. You might identify some specific items in costs. What's going on with research and development? Are the costs being prepared so that the tax return can be prepared without undue extra work on a project cost basis? If your client's an exporter, are you accumulating the data that's needed so you can promptly lodge the export market development grant application? And just bear in mind, if you have got exporters, those applications have to be lodged by the 30th of November. You haven't got much more time. You need budgets and cash flow forecasts that are real, that are prepared on a departmentalised basis. And then you need to be able to give comparisons back to budgets each month. Benchmarking against other businesses. How does this business compare? I envisage you're going to be playing a role where you will be reporting to your client or your board as if you were the CFO. So you'd prepare a written report highlighting the areas that are causing concern. And a business valuation. I mentioned that earlier. I believe that you should be preparing a business valuation. And if your client's got buy-sell agreements, review them each year. And if they haven't got them, and there's other people involved in the business, in the shareholding or partnership basis, talk to them about the benefits of a buy-sell agreement. Valuation gaps are a great way to open a conversation with a client. Ask your client what he thinks the business is worth, then tell him what you think it's worth. He says 2 million, you say 1.1. There's a $900,000 valuation gap. What can you identify as the strategies to try to bridge that gap? Identify grants that your clients can apply for. There's heaps of grants out there. Our product ESS BizGrants will assist you to do that. Corporate governance advice. Risk management strategies. There's a whole stack of these that accountants should be buying more into, I think. Insurance, debtors management, personal property securities register, preferential payment claims. How do you minimize your client's exposure to liquidators? And then remember, in anything to do with the Personal Property Securities Act, there are strict lodgement times. There's a case being reported in the last few weeks where someone lodged something on the 21st business day after an event. It was supposed to have been lodged on the 20th day after the event. One day late, they lost a few $1 million worth of assets. I don't think you would have liked to have been their accountant. And if the business wants to get themselves investment ready, which I think most businesses should be all the time, what do you need to do to help them get to there? And one of the other feedbacks I get from SMEs is they want their accountants to be proactive, not reactive. If you see something that you think should be fixed or could be done differently or is not performing properly, tell your client. Because if you were the CFO in a larger organisation, you'd be expected to say something about those issues, not wait until someone else found out about them. So are you ready to accept this challenge? There are a lot of challenges out there at present. Let's just go back through them. Digital disruption, standard business reporting, tax returns becoming a commodity, outsourcing, the freed up time that some of your competitors are going to use against you because they've got that ability to undercut in the marketplace because they've reduced a significant amount of their costs. I really don't believe you can just sit back and ignore all this. In fact, I would plead with you not to ignore it, to think very seriously about it and decide on a strategy. Assistance is available. ESS BIZTOOLS, we have a comprehensive range of tools to assist in the delivery of Chief Financial Officer services and business advisory services. And ESS Biz Grants will help you to identify grants for individual clients based on their profile, which will take you 2 minutes to enter into our software. Then you receive a report which you can sit down and in a very proactive manner have a conversation with your client. I don't know how many of you were at ATSA 2014. It was in Melbourne about 12 and a half months ago. But I heard a guy called Jason Bender, who was from Deloitte, make one of the best presentations I've ever heard that day. And he finished with this warning. Having talked about some of the issues that I've raised with you today, he went into a lot more depth on digital disruption. If accountants are not really careful, the profession could really suffer. And he finished with, don't let this happen on our watch. I could not think of a better way of finishing this sort of presentation today other than to remind you in some cases or bring to your attention Jason Bender's comments last year. There's no doubt that this is a journey, and it's a journey that's been going on for a long time. I've been around this industry for 40 years, and there's been a lot of changes. We have developed ESS BIZTOOLS, which has been servicing the Australian and New Zealand accounting markets for the last 17 years. So we can assist you in this journey with ESS BIZTOOLS. And there's our web address. And with ESS Biz Grants. And that's our telephone. And we have a toll-free number if you'd like to use it. We would love to hear from you if you are interested in any aspect of our products or services, which are all geared to helping accountants supply a better range of services. I'm just going to check again. I forgot to check periodically on questions. I don't seem to have any questions. If you think of any questions, after this webinar, please send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au. We will be sending you a link to a recording of this webinar in the next couple of days, and we will also send you the PowerPoint slides. I do look forward to hearing from you because we would like to assist you on this journey of supplying a wider range of professional services to the small, medium enterprise market. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.